Hi, everybody. Welcome to A Mirror Darkly, Unbridled Inquiry. I got distracted by a comment from my daughter and forgot to post this. So we're going to get started here in a second. Today's topic is censorship. And here at A Mirror Darkly, we very much support the First Amendment, so you will not be censored.
Although if we disagree with you, we might say that you're stupid.
Right.
But then
We'll cancel you.
You can call us stupid too.
That's right.
It's like the story that's told of, I think it was Coolidge. He was having dinner. It's probably not a true story, but it's amusing. He was having dinner with his family, and as they were quietly eating, he asked his son to do something, and his son popped back with, F you, Dad. And his wife was, of course, utterly shocked, and Coolidge just kept eating. And his wife said, well, aren't you going to do something about that? And Coolidge said, well, if he's talking to me as the President of the United States, then he's within his constitutional rights. If he's talking to me as his father, though, then maybe I'll have to do something.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we run the show in 10-minute segments, so please feel free to comment. You can ask questions. Since this is Unbridled Inquiry, please ask questions.
Yes.
It makes things more interesting. And you don't have to know anything about the topic, although a lot of people, I think, know about censorship.
Or at least they have opinions on it.
Yes. So anyway, if you have a show idea, please post that as well, because this was a secret topic, mostly because we didn't have it scheduled. So we would like to schedule well in advance.
I have scheduled them out now for a while.
Okay,
so.
good. No more secret topics for a while.
It's just that I had failed to reckon with the fact that we'd come to the end of what I had scheduled and needed to schedule something more. So, but yes, it'd be very helpful if people would give me ideas.
And we'll
Otherwise, I have to come up with them myself, and that gets tiresome.
Right, and
they may not be interesting.
We can bump our topics to add other people's topics. We've done that as well.
Yes, or something significant comes up that we need to talk about or want to talk about.
It's not set in stone.
Nope, not at all.
So
we can change things at short notice.
Yes.
The thing about censorship, which I find interesting, is a tendency towards inconsistency on the part of people in regards to it. That is, they will get all up in arms about something that they are in favor of that gets censored. But then if it's something that they don't like that gets censored, they don't really care, and they'll find ways of justifying it. Every year, the American Library Association, although I don't know if they'll continue this, has what's called the Banned Book Week. And what that is are books that have been challenged in libraries, either in schools, public libraries, private schools, whatever, and they make a list of the top books that have that people have attempted to get off the shelves. One of the criticisms of the Banned Book Week has been that, these books aren't actually banned. They haven't been censored in the sense that the government has done it or that you can't get the books. It's just that this individual school, that individual library has made, taking them off the shelves or hidden them away or whatever. But, you can still get them elsewhere. And the American Library Association says, well, the point is not whether or not the book has vanished, but it's the attitude behind it, essentially. That is, that you're wanting to restrict what people are able to get a hold of. Now, what's weird about censorship, and censors tend not to quite grasp this point, is that when you start censoring something, that makes that thing more attractive. It brings attention to it. So it's counterproductive in that regard. That is, people bend over backwards trying to find the object that you have censored. So censorship is an ineffective tool anyway. But beyond that, I'd say it's an inappropriate tool. The way to oppose speech or writings that you don't like, that you find offensive in some way, is with more speech and more writing. That is, you oppose bad ideas through reasoned argument, not through trying to make the other person shut the F up, which seems to be the default of an awful lot of people. When it comes to those that they disagree with. Now, they will support free speech as long as it's free speech they agree with. But if it's free speech they don't agree with, then, it needs to be stopped. It's disinformation, it's fake news, it's offensive, it's, this or that or the other thing that you're offended by. And I'm sorry, but that's not the way it works. I'm with Thomas Jefferson. As I recall, he made this comment regarding religious liberty, but it applies to liberty in general. He said, if it doesn't break my bone or steal from my pocket, then really, why do I care? What's it matter? Why is it that you're concerned with trying to keep something from being out there?
Well, a really good example is Last Temptation of Christ. It was a really poorly done movie.
Yeah, it was boring.
Badly acted, horribly written. It was super boring. And we went to see it because of all the uproar. We probably wouldn't have gone because we're not like Jesus film kind of people anyway.
But because people were trying to shut the thing down, make it go away because they were offended by it, we thought it was a good idea to go.
And the movie made a lot more money than it would have if it hadn't been in the middle of all this controversy. So there's a flip side to censorship. If you can get your book, at least the talk of banning your book, going without it actually getting banned, you can make a lot of money.
Well, a good example of this is, what was his name? A fatwa was issued against him by the Ayatollah Khomeini. What was the name of the book?
It was the Satanic Verses.
Satanic Verses, yes.
Salman
Rushdie.
Salman Rushdie.
Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses. The only reason I bought the book is because of the opposition to it. Otherwise, I would not. It's just not the kind of thing that I was that interested in.
Well, that's called boycotting. So if people want something banned or boycotted and you disagree with it, then you boycott. So you go ahead and buy it if it's within your ability to spend the money on
So
such a
Salman
thing.
Rushdie became a much better known individual, and his book sold much better than it would have otherwise as a consequence of all that publicity.
Yep. Well, and now, so like Dave Pilkey was just pressured to remove one of his books because it supposedly, and I don't know because I haven't read the book, he's the author of like Cat Kong, they're children's books, and he's a hugely popular children's author.
But somebody was bothered by one of his books, and so he decided to get rid of it.
Okay, well, I won't explain it.
Sorry.
Anyway, and he does Captain Underpants. Anyway, he has a series of books called Ook and Gluck, and supposedly there was stereotypical portrayals of Asians, I guess. And so he was pressured, and he did a humble brag apology, and his book has now been removed from the store shelves and from libraries. And so I went to Amazon to see if I could hurry up and buy one. It's currently going for $800. So somebody's making money off of this censorship business. I don't have money to spend $800 on anything, much less a book. So I didn't buy it, but I was sorely tempted. But
And see, the problem is people look at that and say, well, that's not censorship. The government had nothing to do with it. Well, the book has been disappeared.
yes.
Regardless of who does it, even if it's the author himself, it's the underlying attitude that I find offensive. That is, censorship just is not a good idea. It is counterproductive, and I quite frankly think it's wrong.
And on Dr. Seuss's birthday, because no good deed goes unpunished, on Dr. Seuss's birthday, they banned some of his books. Well, one of the books, I didn't have it in my classroom. I do own it, but it was, and to think I saw it on Mulberry Street. And it's about this kid who exaggerates stories, and I have read it. This kid exaggerates his stories, and his dad always asks him, so what did you see on your way home from school? And so he comes up with this really huge story about this parade and blah, blah, and he just keeps adding to it. And then he tells his dad, the real truth when he gets home. But anyway, in the picture, there is like a Raja and being carried in one of those chairs that hold him up, by servants hold him up. And then there was a stereotypical Chinese person with chopsticks and the cone hat and the Chinese like silk clothes, So anyway, but there was nothing written negative about it. It was just a parade that had all these different people. To me, it was kind of a caricature portrayal of everybody that was in there. The elephants didn't behave exactly like elephants behave. They all, how Dr. Seuss writes and draws his pictures. Anyway, so I did find a read aloud of it on YouTube that day that hadn't been taken down yet. And because I'm distance teaching, I played the YouTube version, and I said, very soon you will not be able to get this book anymore. So if you have it, hang on to it. Don't get rid of it. And we talked about stereotypical representations of people that from the past, like when you know better, you do better, but it doesn't mean you go back and erase what you did before.
Unless you think 1984 is a how-to manual.
Right.
Because that's what Winston Smith's job was in 1984, is to erase past events and change them to fit the way things are supposed to be today. And so it's the type of thing that totalitarian regimes do on a regular basis. That is, they predict in 5 years we'll have this much, growth rate in the economy, and if the economy doesn't grow to that extent, well, you just change the prediction back in the old newspapers, and it's all fixed. If somebody falls out of favor, you just erase their picture from the photographs. And this is an ancient technique. The ancient Egyptians did the same thing. Any totalitarian regime does that. The only reason we know about Akhenaten, who's called the heretic king, is because when he fell out of favor, they did erase all references to him in their documentation, but they just abandoned the new capital city he had built. And so eventually, several thousand years later, archaeologists dig it up, and lo and behold, here's this Akhenaten guy.
And Steve Martin even wrote a song about him.
No, that's King Tut. That's his son.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, King Tut was Akhenaten's son.
Okay.
Common. But anyway, but that's just what, and censorship has a tendency to go in that direction, and it's always done for good reasons. That is, we've got to protect the children. We've got to get rid of this offensive thing. And you have the list, the American Library Association, they do the banned book list, and I've got a list of the top 10 books.
While you're looking that up, I wanted to explain, too, what I told my children about banning books. I said, the only person or people that can tell you what books you can or can't read are your parents. That librarians shouldn't, right, that not librarians, not bookstore owners, not publishers, not your teacher. If a child wants to read a book, and now I will restrict it based on their reading level. Like if I have a kid that can barely read The Fat Cat Sat on the Mat, I'm not going to let them check out a Harry Potter book. But they'd
be frustrated.
Right, they'd be frustrated. It'd be pointless, and some kid who wants to read Harry Potter won't be able to because the kid who can't read has it.
Yeah, when I was growing up, the library that we went to in Ohio was restricted by age. And the way we got around it is that my mom would just check out the books I was interested in. So, anyway, the interesting thing about the books that get banned, that are listed in this banned book list each year, a lot of them will be pro-gay books, LGBTQ books, that sort of thing. But then you have other ones. Now, ironically, the number 2 book is the Captain Underpants series by Dave Pilkey.
Interesting.
That's one of the top banned books.
Because it's not a Captain Underpants book that he
it's not.
Apologized for.
Yeah,
Fake apologies.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. But you've got The Absolutely True Diary of Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher, Looking for Alaska by John Green, George by Alex Sino, and Tango Makes 3 by Justin Richardson, Peter Parnell, Drama by Raina Telgemeier, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. I wonder why they would ban that, or want to. Internet Girls by Lauren Miracle, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, I Am Jazz by Jazz Jennings and Jessica Hethai, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Bone, the series
To Kill a Mockingbird? Wow.
Bone series by Jeff Smith, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, Two Boys Kissing.
Glass Castle, I read that.
Yeah, Two Boys Kissing by David Levithan, Day in the Life of Marion Bundo by Jill Twiss, and Sex is a Funny Word by Corey Silverberg. Harry Potter novels get attacked on a regular basis. The Bible, Huckleberry Finn.
Well, the Bible should be banned because there is like sex, there's violence, it's gory. You have fat people, you have fat shaming. I mean, there's all kinds of things in there. Yeah. There's prostitutes and plural marriage and all these horrible topics.
Yes.
The Bible should be banned. I agree.
But see, this is the problem. Once you start banning, it's like, well, where do you stop and who makes the decision?
Right.
That is this ever a right thing to do? And I would argue, no, I'm an absolutist when it comes to my opposition of censorship. I don't think anything should be banned.
Well, the free market will determine
Whether or not something sells well.
right. Like for example, with the Last Temptation of Christ, that movie would have failed financially if the Christians had just kept their mouths shut. But Christians were out there passing out literature, passing out New Testaments, things like that about why. What was that?
Picket signs.
Oh, okay. I was like, you had just crunched up your wrapper, your candy wrapper, and you were going like this. I'm like,
Picket signs.
you feeling okay?
No, but that's okay. Allergies are bad.
Yes, but I don't think that creates insanity, though.
No, it just creates depression.
Yes. So, but anyway, and like I told my kids, only your parents can tell you what you can and can't read.
Once
Nobody
you grow
else
up,
can.
forget it.
And then once you turn 18, when we learn about civil rights and stuff, and we learn about the Bill of Rights at the beginning of the year when we're talking about the Constitution, I tell the kids that you have civil rights when you turn 18. You don't have all your civil rights yet. So, or all the Bill of Rights. So your parents are still the boss of you and tell you what you can and can't say. And at school, we tell you what you can and can't say because you can't use the F word at school.
Yeah.
They do, but we tell them they can't.
And see, what happens with censorship is that you have groups. That is, this group will be opposed to certain things and they'll want to ban certain things. The other group will be opposed to different things and they'll want to ban other things, and they'll think it's horrible that these people want to ban that stuff. And I say a pox on all of them. Ray Bradbury wrote the following.
Well, you're looking that up. I was going to say on one of my teacher Facebook pages, which you would think that teachers would be the last ones that would do this, but this was several months ago, that she actually burned a book about Columbus. It wasn't a school thing. It was her own personal, like, backyard fire pit thing, but she actually burned a book about Columbus. And that was, to me, horrifying, that she would actually burn a book. It wasn't figurative book burning, it was actual book burning.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead and read your, oh, and Angie's here. Hi, Angie.
Oh, hi, Angie. He wrote, and this was in his coda, it appeared in the 1979 edition of Fahrenheit 451, and it's been reprinted several different places since then. And so he wrote, "There is more than one way to burn a book, and the world is full of people running about with lit matches. Every minority, be it Baptist, Unitarian, Irish, Italian, Octogenarian, Zen Buddhist, Zionist, Seventh-day Adventist, Women's Lib, Republican, Madakeen, Foursquare Gospel, feels it has the will, the right, and the duty to douse the kerosene, light the fuse. Every dimwit editor who sees himself as the source of all dreary blancmange, plain porridge, unleavened literature, licks his guillotine and eyes the neck of any author who dares to speak above a whisper or write above a nursery rhyme." Fire Captain Betty, in my novel Fahrenheit 451, described how the books were burned, first by minorities, each ripping a page or a paragraph from this book and that, until the day came when the books were empty and the mines shut and the libraries closed forever. "Shut the door, they're coming through the window. Shut the window, they're coming through the door," are the words to an old song. They fit my lifestyle with newly arriving butcher censors every month. Now, this is in 1979. He wrote, "Only 6 weeks ago, I discovered that over the years, some cubbyhole editors at Ballantine Books, fearful of contaminating the young, had, bit by bit, censored 75 separate sections from the novel Fahrenheit 451. Students reading the novel, which, after all, deals with censorship and book burning in the future, wrote to tell me of this exquisite irony. Judy Lynn Del Rey, one of the new Ballantine editors, is having the entire book reset and republished this summer with all the dams and hells back in place." So that's just the nature of things. And it's not necessarily coming from above, it comes from below. That is, people imagine censorship as something only governments can do, and if it's not the government doing it, then I don't need to worry. Well, no. censorship of any sort is an abomination, I think. The Roman Catholic Church has a list of prohibited books, and it still exists, where they are trying to keep people that happen to be Catholics from reading certain things. They are prohibited. If you're a Roman Catholic author, you are supposed to submit what you have written, if it deals with anything theological, to higher ups, and they can look through it and decide whether or not it's okay. And if it is, then you'll get this little symbol in it, and the words in Latin, nihil obstat, which means there's nothing objectionable in it, and so it's fine. I have several commentaries from, it was originally just the Anchor Bible Commentary Series. Now it's the Yale Anchor Bible Commentary Series. It got sold from Doubleday to Yale University Press. And there's several of the commentaries that have the nihil obstat thing at the beginning, because they happen to have been produced by a Roman Catholic scholar.
Interesting.
Censorship still exists, and some people would want to argue, well, that's not censorship because, it's a private organization, they can do whatever they want. And I'd say, no, that's still censorship. That is, anytime you're trying to prevent people from reading certain things, where you're trying to control what an author produces, it's censorship. And I think it's bad. I think the whole attitude associated with it is flawed. It just doesn't make sense. It's not a useful thing. I've experienced it myself, and as an author, it's uncomfortable to have somebody telling you, well, you need to redo this because we find what you've done objectionable, or they take all the copies of something you've produced and they destroy them. You could say, well, it's a private institution, they could do what they want. Well, yeah, they can do what they want, doesn't mean that it's right.
Exactly.
Private institutions can do whatever they want, and I can tell them they're wrong, because I think it's evil, flat out.
Yep.
There are those that think that, if you allow too much liberty, that somehow that's a bad thing. And yet, and I've pointed this out before, that if God had thought that being good and not being offensive and not doing anything wrong was the most important thing of all, then he would not have allowed Adam and Eve the choice in the Garden of Eden regarding eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He gave them that choice, and he said, here's this thing, don't touch it, don't eat it. He didn't stop them from doing it. He didn't intervene. He let them do what they wanted to do, because liberty was more important to God than making people be good. Well, and so if liberty is more important to God, then maybe the liberty to write and speak and produce whatever you want is within God's will.
People talk about how violent American society is, with people getting shot and things like that. And it's the
lack
price.
Of historical knowledge.
Right. Yeah. Well, but it's also the price you pay for living in a free country.
Yes.
So with the Second Amendment, with the First Amendment, people are going to say things you don't like. You don't have to listen to it. And here's the other thing. If you publish something that people don't like to read, or you say something people don't like to hear, they have the right to criticize you.
Or to ignore you.
Or to ignore you and not accept what you say.
Right.
But they don't have the right to silence you.
Right.
So anyway, we're up to a 10-minute mark. Angie said, I'm the boss until they can pay their own bills.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, with children, we do restrict their rights.
Yes.
That is, we don't let them do whatever they
The
want.
Second Amendment does not apply to children. They should not be running around with guns.
Well,
Nerf guns are fine.
Actually, if they are properly trained.
Yes. Oh, here's an interesting story. So a couple that used to go to our church, he's currently in a nursing home, and his wife passed away last January, a year ago, January. They're black, and they grew up in the deep South, and she told us a story long time ago. And his father was actually a sharecropper. He never learned to read. But she did, and she was an author. She's written quite a few books. But she told us a story about how her father would take her out shooting practice. And if he put like a can or a bottle on the fence post, and if she didn't hit it the first shot, that she'd get a beating. And I was like, oh, that's horrible. What a horrible thing to do. But the reason was because he was teaching her to defend herself against the KKK. And he's like, you don't get a second chance with them. You shoot to kill or you're dead. And so that was
eye-opening.
Very eye-opening, yeah. And they actually were installed into an African-American museum in Georgia, I want to say. Was it Georgia? They couldn't go.
I'd have to look up
So we arranged for them, because of their health, they couldn't go, but we arranged for them to sit in our living room and do it by Skype. Their son or nephew, the squirrels are playing in the tree. Their son or squirrel, their son or nephew, I forget who it was, had a computer there, and they got to watch the installation of their things in this museum back east. It was really cool. But there was something I was going to say about that with our topic. I forget what my point was.
Don't know what your point was either.
Yeah, when I think of it, I'll let you know.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, she said Nerf guns are their jam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, and
No, you
I just
control
bought a
what your
bubble gun
children
for my
do, but
grandson.
once you're a full adult, then
Yep, make your own choices.
make your own choices, and don't try to make them for other people.
Yep.
For one thing, they're not going to like it.
Yes.
So, and they'll tend to tell you to do things that are physically impossible. So another quotation from...
Oh, I was talking about children shooting guns.
Oh, yes.
That's what my point was.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's
in
for
that case-
protection, or like I had a friend when we lived in Pennsylvania who got to drive when he was 12. He had a provisional license to drive farm equipment and to drive the pickup truck. Like if he had to go get feed or anything like that, he could drive it in town. But he wasn't allowed to like just drive wherever he wanted. And I was super jealous because I was like born to drive. But that was important that he be able to do that because it's a family farm and he had to help out on the farm. So some rights for children are based on the situation, but mostly we restrict their rights, like their Second Amendment rights. Your kid can't come to you and go.
All sorts of rights are restricted.
Right, for children, but they
They can't vote either.
Yes. So whether they have ID or not.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah.
But it is shocking to me how many teachers want things banned and support
And it's
it.
weird because it's like they've never read 1984, they've never read Fahrenheit 451, they haven't really paid attention to history that closely either.
Well, they've gotten
That
that
is-
slanted history from that guy
Yeah,
that's so
well,
prevalent in the universities.
The thing is, if you stop and think about when have those who censor things ever been the good guys? I don't know that they ever are. That is, generally speaking, those that blacklist people, that try to prevent things from being published, that stand in the way of this sort of thing, they have tended, in all the things I've read and seen, to be vilified. And so I'm just puzzled why now you have apologists for book banning of various sorts because, well, you know, it's got this particular problem, so therefore we need to get rid of it. No, it doesn't. It's just, you can't come up with a justification for banning a book, I don't think. I would very much disagree with that. It's interesting. There's a book that we did have in the library here, but somebody stole it. It was called The Anarchist Cookbook. And
How to cook an anarchist?
no, but it makes sense somebody would steal it because if you're an anarchist, then there's no rules, and so you just do it.
Right, so an anarchist stole it.
So an anarchist stole it probably. But what the book has in it are, you know, how to build bombs and how to do all sorts of things that, you know, you probably shouldn't really do. But again, I don't think it's something that should be banned. because you're going to find the information anyway. And again,
Now it's on the internet, so you don't really need a book.
yeah. And some things are not as easy to create as you might imagine. That is, as an example, if you wanted to build an atomic weapon, you could do it. The difficulty you would face, though, is getting the fissile material together, because getting purified enough uranium or plutonium to explode is incredibly difficult. And that's the big sticking point with building a nuclear weapon. That is, you can build all the parts, but if you don't have that, it's just a pretty thing that sits on your desk and does nothing. Because
You can hope it's sitting on your
well, the
desk.
reality is that if you have enough of purified material, that is plutonium U-235 or uranium U-235 or plutonium, whatever version of it that you need, if you have enough of it in one spot, it will blow up. That is, critical mass is a real thing. And so if you have enough of it together, it will just spontaneously go kaboom. And of course, that's part of the problem with it. Of course, it tends to just kind of, it won't be as big a boom as you want, it kind of fizzle out. There's actually a place in Africa where they found a nuclear reactor, a natural nuclear reactor that went for thousands of years. It's just because there happened to be enough of the material there that was pure enough that it could start reacting.
Interesting.
And they
Where
found...
in Africa?
I'd have to look it up.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah, but what happened is French company, I think it was French company, was doing, mining stuff, and they found that the uranium or whatever it was in this area had the wrong percentage of, fissile to not bothersome material, and it was a puzzle to them. Because the only way you would get the kind of ratio of stuff that they were seeing is if it was a nuclear reactor, but you didn't have nuclear reactors tens of thousands of years ago. Well, they discovered that it was just a natural thing, and so it does happen and can happen. That is, just having the material, enough of the right material together, you get a nuclear reaction. But it's very hard to purify things to that level. That was the big problem in World War II. The hardest part of developing the nuclear bomb was figuring out a way to purify the uranium or plutonium to a point where it would go kaboom if you had enough of it together in one spot. And then figuring out how do you get that to work so that you get a boom
Without blowing yourself
without
up.
blowing yourself
waiting
up,
till it's in the plane and over your target.
or with it not being enough to really do the boom that you need, and it kind of
Right.
fizzles out. And so they came up with a couple different methods. So it wasn't easy. There's a good book on it, and the name of it just escapes me.
There's a museum in Las Vegas that's the Atomic something museum.
Yeah.
And when my mom and my sister and I go to Vegas, like without the pandemic, we go once or twice a year. And we're trying to think of new things to do because you can only do the Strip so many times. And so I was like, ooh, this Atomic Museum. And my sister's like, oh, that's kind of more of a you and Robin thing. We're not going to do that. We want to eventually go to the Mob Museum, but we haven't yet. But that's something I'd like for us to do, is go to Vegas one day and go to the Atomic Blast Museum. Because people used to stand in the hotels and look out across the desert and watch these mushroom clouds. They would blow up atomic weapons right outside Las Vegas.
Well, yeah, it's a few miles away.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's pretty darn close.
Yeah, well, the whole idea of blowing them up in the atmosphere, they eventually realized was a bad idea.
Yes.
But it took a while.
So, yeah.
The title of the book is The Making of the Atomic Bomb. It's written by Richard Rhodes. 25th anniversary edition of it came out in 2012. But it's a really good overview of the development of the atomic bomb and how they came, all the problems they had in doing it. And of course, the disturbing thing you'll get from reading that book is just how, in some sense, easy an atomic bomb is once you figured out, how the process works.
It's not something you're going to build in your garage, though.
Well, you could actually build an atomic bomb in your garage.
But you need the stuff.
Except you wouldn't be able, it wouldn't
Right.
go boom.
So
You
it's
just
not an
build
atomic bomb.
No, it's just a bomb that could be atomic if you had the fissile material.
Right.
Anyway,
I mean, if you have a bike with no wheels on it, you don't have a bike. You've got a bike frame.
True.
So same thing.
It's
You've
a
got
bike.
the housing for an
You've got
atomic
it.
bomb.
Yeah,
That's
you
all
have the
you've got.
housing and the yeah. Anyway, but banning ideas, banning information, banning books, banning radio shows, banning TV shows, banning movies, none of that makes much sense to me. It's not reasonable. Yes, there are movies, shows, books, articles, speeches that are offensive. I still don't think they should be banned.
Right. Sometimes they're just funny, and in order to be funny, you have to be kind of offensive because you're exaggerating something that's different about someone or something and making it funny. I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld episodes, and I'm like, they couldn't have made this in 2020, 2021. There's no way they would have gotten canceled. And and then I was watching, I think it was MeTV, because they do a lot of the old TV shows. They have All in the Family on there, and I was really surprised. But there is a little disclaimer at the beginning, sort of like the Surgeon General's warning, that things in this show may be offensive to like our current sensibilities, but it was meant for comedy back before we were as enlightened as we are now.
In case you're too stupid to get
here. Yes. And
if
All in the Family
is
is
here is this
funny.
Explanation for
but
it.
What's really ironic about it is that Carol O'Connor, who played Archie Bunker, was seriously leftist liberal. I mean, he would like be super comfortable with the whole far left thing right now.
Yeah, but the thing is, and this is the other thing that I find intriguing, is that the penchant for censorship is not something that is just people in this political party or that political party that are in favor.
No, and that wasn't my point.
There's a lot of liberals who'd be appalled by and are appalled by this sort of thing.
Because Archie was so conservative.
Yes.
And had so many bigoted
it is the contrast and the actor versus who he's portraying.
Right.
It was a radical difference.
Right. Like Rob Reiner kind of played himself.
Yes.
You know, it was not an acting stretch for him. But for Carol O'Connor, that would be a serious stretch, because he would not have held those same beliefs that Archie Bunker did. But that's a true artist.
Yes.
That you can embody this person that is the polar opposite of you and make it someone that people care about and want to watch every week.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it and just make it somebody totally despicable that nobody would watch. But he made a very endearing character. I mean, people really liked Archie, even though he was a jerk, and felt sorry for his dingbat wife Edith. You know, because he was a male chauvinist pig, like we say back in the day, and he was a racist, and he was bad on a lot of accounts, but ultimately he really loved his family and he really loved his community. He just had some really, some ideas that don't sit well with people. But I think it's important to have those kind of characters that exaggerate something that is offensive to make people understand it.
Well, the problem with banning things is that you're getting rid of information. You're also getting rid of history. I mean, one of the things that's amusing, I think, is to read, say, an old encyclopedia or an old science book and see how off they are, how they've missed certain things and misunderstood certain things, and how we've learned more since whenever.
Well,
but you don't ban them just because, well, this book is wrong. Well, yeah, but it was written 100 years ago, so of course it's going to have a lot of things in it that are wrong.
Right.
Big, hairy deal.
Well, I did, when I was student teaching, I student taught in a 5th, 6th grade gifted class, and they had an amazing teacher, and so I had to do a science unit. Well, we give homes to homeless books, and I had this old set of encyclopedias, so I decided to, and this was before we had internet, this was almost 40 years ago. But anyway, so I had this old set of encyclopedias, and then there was a set of encyclopedias in the classroom. And one of their jobs was to look at the planets, what we used to believe the planets were like, and what we now know. And we now know even more because we've sent out probes and we have the Hubble telescope. This is before all of that. But, and it was just fascinating, just the moon. I know the moon's not a planet, but just the information on the moon, and how, they thought it was like those jagged mountains and it was made of green cheese. That wasn't in the encyclopedia. Yeah. But anyway, so, and then the kids were like, but that's not what the moon is like, because, we've been there since that was written. But, and that's why people that like, well, this is an old encyclopedia, I'm just going to throw it out.
Yeah. And it's not. Yeah, the attitude, I hear people want to ban something because it's misinformation or it's fake news or whatever. Well, where do you draw the line? As an old encyclopedia is fake news, it's misinformation. Does that mean we should ban it?
Right.
An old textbook is fake information. An old science book is fake information. Take the philosopher Aristotle. Good percentage of the stuff he writes is wrong. Does that mean we should ban Aristotle?
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
So I have a question for you, because this came up. Actually, I didn't show a video to my kids because it was really politically charged, and third grade, I really monitor how much politics is fed to them through the videos that I show. And I am responsible for that. That's part of my job, is to kind of filter some of those videos.
Again, you're dealing with children, so you want to...
And we live in a pretty conservative area. So like this one series of videos that I like to show, it's called Kids Meet, and they meet different kinds of people. They meet people who are blind, they meet people who have a guide dog, they meet people who have certain diseases or have handicaps and things like that. And I told them the reason why I show you these, so when you see a person, like when you see a little person, you're not like, oh, look at that person, because you've already seen them in a video. You know that they're normal, they're just different size than us. And so you're less likely to like stare and be overly curious, because you're like, okay, well, this is kind of normal. And that's one of the things that I think that the current level of reality TV brings to us. It brings people that are different into our homes, so that when we do meet these people in real life, we're not like, whoa, that's like so weird and blah. But anyway, so this thing was rather politically charged, so I didn't show it. But this is kind of a theme I'm hearing, and I don't know if it's a censorship thing or if I don't know if it'll fit this topic. We might need a show on it. But anyway, this idea that history is written by the victor, and our current history is all lies because it was written by white people who overpowered, the Indians and things like that.
Well, that's a nice cliche that history is written by the victors, and there is a certain amount of truth in that, but not entirely, because the writing of history is a secondary thing.
Right.
The original source material is just there, and different historians will have their own given take on certain things. And there's nothing that prevents the losers in a conflict from also writing histories, and of course they do. And so it's really, people say, history is written by the victors, but that's not
entirely accurate.
It's not a complete picture of what the reality is. And again, from a military and political standpoint, the Old Testament was written by the losers. That is, Israel was beaten by everybody that came along. That is, the Jewish state ceased to exist as an independent entity by before 605 BC. From 605 BC until 1948, you did not have an independent Jewish nation. They were destroyed and taken captive, first by the northern part of the kingdom by the Assyrians, then the southern part of the kingdom by the Babylonians, then the Persians allowed them to go back, but they were still controlled by the Persian Empire. Persian Empire is conquered by the Greeks, by Alexander the Great, and so then the Greeks are running what was originally Israel. Then the Romans are running it, and then the eastern half of the Roman Empire lasts until about 1453. Thereafter, then it's controlled by the Ottoman Turks, and then it comes under the control of the British after the Ottoman Turks backed the wrong horse in the First World War, and then they finally gained their independence in 1948. So they're continually the loser from a political standpoint, and yet the Bible is written by these people. So there you go.
Okay. It just seemed odd to me. I mean, it makes sense that, like, oh, we conquered this country and here's how we did it. We're so amazing and wonderful. But there has to be, and when you look at primary sources, like, for example, and I forget where I read this, but, like, there's all this controversy about Christopher Columbus that, like, he, like, raped and pillaged and took slaves and blah, blah, blah. But some of those Indian groups that the explorers had contact with, like, ate their babies and stuff. People think that the Indians were all just, peaceful, sitting around campfires.
Yeah, the Aztecs were
roasting
not particularly
buffalo.
nice.
No.
Human sacrifice was the norm.
Yeah. And so it seems odd to me that people think, well, because they're a minority and they're an oppressed group, that they must be good, inherently good. That's not the case. Nobody's inherently good.
Yeah, human beings are, generally speaking, not the nicest creatures, and when a group of human beings are in power, there is a tendency for them to be mean to those who are not in power. And it has nothing to do with anything beyond the fact that they're in power. That is, their ethnicity, skin color, gender, nothing has anything to do with whether or not they will be nice to those that they are trying to oppress. And oppression is what people do to other people. Jesus was rather clear when he was talking to his disciples. James and John wanted to sit on the right and left hand of Christ when he came into his kingdom. And this, of course, annoyed the other disciples. And Jesus said, look, the Gentiles lord it over one another. It's not the way it's supposed to be. With you, it shouldn't be that way. Whoever wants to be greatest should be the servant of all. And, of course, that's what Jesus showed through his life and death, is that he is the servant, as he came not to be Lord, but to die for our sins, which is not the way human beings generally function. Human beings are very hierarchical, and we want to be the boss, and we want to oppress those who are not the boss. We want to tell them what to do and what not to do and how high to jump and all of those sorts of things. Human beings are very often very reprehensible, and it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has all to do with the character of your
content of your character.
Content of your character. Thank you.
Yes. And people have really lost sight of that.
Yeah, screwed up the Martin Luther King Jr. Quote. But it's an important one, although he's falling out of favor too, unfortunately.
Yes.
That attitude, anyway. But, yeah, censorship just is not... I don't think it's justifiable, period. Yes, there are things that I don't like. I don't like Mein Kampf, but I don't think it should be banned. I don't like... who else do I like? I didn't like the movie Made in Manhattan or whatever it was.
Not Made in Manhattan.
No,
it was the Wedding Planner.
Was it The Wedding Planner that I didn't like?
Yeah. With
I don't
Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, I didn't like the movie Wedding Planner. I thought it was very poorly done, romantic comedy. We disagree on that. But I don't think it should be banned.
I only disagree because you hate it so much and you talk so much.
Yeah, I absolutely despise that movie. But it deserves to exist. It can exist. I just will never watch it. And I will.
But see, that's where the free market comes in, because if it sucks,
I'm apparently in a minority. A lot of people liked it, so oh well. And that's often the case too. That is, things are a matter of taste sometimes. But then there are things that are offensive that I don't want to. I mean, my youngest daughter loves horror movies. I do not like horror movies. I prefer not to see them. But I understand that a lot of people enjoy them and get a lot out of it. Fine, just don't make me do it.
That's right. But again, if it's a bad movie or a bad book, people won't buy it, and so it's self-canceling. But if you make a big deal out of it, like, oh, this book should be banned, people are going to run out and buy it. Like, now that I found out that Captain Underpants is on the banned book list, I think I might go out and buy a bunch because I can't get Ook and Gluck. So I want to send some money Dave Pilkey's way. So I may buy some. One of the little guys in my class, he loves Captain Underpants,
Yeah,
and
well,
he's
they're
read
funny.
every single one.
Particularly funny for small children because
Yes.
they, for whatever find that whole thing
Well,
very
Underpants
funny.
are very funny in third grade.
Yeah, they are.
That
Don't know
and
why,
Fart.
but they are.
Fart and Underpants.
Yeah.
But I try, well, in my class, I kind of was all, well, here's another one where I censored. So there was I show my kids phonics videos because we're distance learning. It's something they can watch over again if they're having trouble with the letter sounds and stuff. And there was one for the R sound, AR. And there were 2 versions of the video. And there's a little girl, and all of a sudden this puff of brown comes out of her butt, like from behind her, and it says fart. R is fart or something like that.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I do the other video because I wondered why there were 2 versions of it. Watched the other one and they didn't have fart in that one. So I'm showing the video to my class, and all of a sudden this feeling of dread came over me, like, I hope this isn't the fart one, because they're exactly the same except for the fart section. Sure enough, I put the wrong link on it, because I watch every single video I
But
show
the
my
kids
kids.
enjoyed it, didn't they?
Oh, they thought it was hysterical. And probably my class, that'll be the one question they get right on the test.
And they will
is
remember
the R sound. Yeah.
that sound
They
now
thought
for
it was
sure.
So funny. I didn't show it to the second session, though. I showed them the cleaned up version.
But another example of
Or did I?
censorship.
I think I did, just made a joke out of it.
The college that we went to, and what would the librarian do with Sports Illustrated?
She cut out all the bikini models out of the Sports Illustrated. Yeah.
Just weird.
So that meant that the boys all had to go to an actual magazine stand, like at the grocery store, and buy their own copy of Sports Illustrated. They couldn't get it at the school library.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was the arbiter of what is appropriate for the young males at that school.
Yes.
Well,
Adults.
Yes, who are currently over 18. But here's the caveat to that. Going to a private Christian school, the parents expect the school to parent the child because they haven't prepared their kids to be out in the real world. They haven't taught them how to survive. They've kept them in this little Christian shell, kept their lives super clean. They don't know their kids are doing stuff behind their backs. But there were kids that were there that didn't want to be there. We had a couple of girls on our floor that they asked, what do we have to do to get kicked out of the school? And they said, well, if you're, they gave them several things. They were like, one of them was, if you're gay, you can't be at the school. So they pretended to be lesbians. They might have been, I don't know, but they were pretending to be lesbians, and they got kicked out because their parents were paying for school. Their parents had dropped them off there, and they wanted to know how to get out because they didn't want to be there. They were tired of being sheltered and all that. So they pretended to be lesbians and got kicked out of Baptist College. Mm-hmm. So, and that's sad. I mean, my kids didn't go to a Christian college because I didn't want that for them.
Yeah.
So,
well, because the
and it's
Christian
way
college,
expensive.
yeah, the Christian college you went to is not the same as it used to be anyway.
And it's super expensive. I mean, it was expensive when we went, and it's crazy expensive now. So
and there's no point.
Yeah.
The education is not better.
Yeah.
For the amount of money you're spending.
Right. Well, the professors that we had were really good because they would give you all the points of view. They would tell you what theirs was, but they would give you all the points of view, and I really liked that. Although I have a friend who went through the science department and said it was kind of lacking in the science part because being a strict creationist school, it didn't really prepare them as well in the science realm. But as far as being a liberal studies major, I felt it was a really good education. So, but we had actual teachers teaching our teacher ed classes and
academic freedom was still a thing there.
Yes,
which is not the case anymore.
The professors were not censored in what they could teach, what they could write, all that kind of stuff. But they are now.
Yep, and I rebelled against that.
And those profs aren't there anymore.
Yeah, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
because I didn't find the.
Well, really, none of them are there. And
No,
my
absolutely none of
psych
them are there.
professor was removed from the head of the department because she was a woman.
And because ultimately they didn't believe in psychology.
Right.
Thinking in terms of the not preparing people with science
Adequately.
very well.
Right.
It's a good example of that.
Yeah. So you get a degree in biblical counseling, but not a degree in psychology because
A degree in
all
biblical
your
counseling makes about as much sense as a degree in biblical gynecology. I don't get it. I'm sorry. It makes no sense.
So, you have a yeast infection? Here, read the Bible, see what it tells you to do.
Yeah, really? It's just nonsense. I'm sorry. I find the whole concept nonsensical. That is, they have no idea how things actually work. I'd like to see them spend time with my mentally ill children, and then come to me
Well,
and
it's
tell
because
me
we didn't
how.
raise them right. We should have hit them more when they
Oh
were
yes,
little.
that would really correct bipolar.
Yes,
Hitting them.
yes.
Yeah, that will reduce the amount of rage and
Yeah.
out of control behavior. Yeah. Idiots. No.
Obviously, he has an opinion. We'll get banned now. We'll
Yeah.
get canceled.
Well, that would be fine. It's not likely to happen.
Well, we're like 2 minutes away. Well, I know
yeah,
for a
we
fact
are.
none of them are listening, so because I can
Yes.
see who's listening.
Yeah. Well, I really don't care. Of course,
You were already censored by them, though.
yeah, I was already censored by them. That's part of the reason that I am fairly strong. I mean, I was strong on being anti-censorship to begin with, but having experienced it, actually not just there, but a couple other places, I'm pretty sensitive to it.
We lost everything there because we stood up. We stood up against racism, and we lost everything. Our church, we lost everything, and
Yeah,
so we
because
moved
of what
up
we
here.
wrote.
Yep.
Because of what we wrote.
Yep.
They didn't like it. They destroyed the copies they could get a hold of, although they were surreptitiously passed around by people.
Yes.
It reminded me very much of the one part of the Harry Potter novel where you have Dolores Umbridge, and Harry Potter gives an interview for the Quibbler, and she bans the Quibbler, but then everybody is passing copies around beneath her snooty nose.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with what I had contributed.
Well, that's
to
what
writing.
happens with censorship.
That's what happens with censorship. Things will still get passed around. And so, again, those that want to censor are morons because what they're trying to do is ineffective. And all it does is create problems for the authors. Of course, the authors are going to lose money then. And authors
Well,
need to eat just like anybody else.
Now the only copies of Ook and Gluck you can come across are like at yard sales and things like that. And the author doesn't make any money from yard sales. And when libraries discard their old books and give them away, the author doesn't make any
The only
money.
time
on
the
that.
author makes money is when the book is sold the first time. After that, I don't see any royalties from it.
Yep. And if it becomes really rare, then you end up with photocopies of it, which the author does not get money for that either.
Nope.
So, yeah. Well, you see that with record sales too.
Yeah.
You know, when records
Well,
are
the music
banned and
industry is
stuff.
even
and-
worse for how it
banning
treats
stuff.
its creative people.
Yeah. So,
So
anyway.
yeah. So censorship
Jinx.
bad under any circumstances whatsoever, and censorship is something that is done whenever you try to prevent the distribution of written or spoken materials. It doesn't. It's not just the government doing it, it's anybody. It's the attitude that sucks.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Somehow our
That's my opinion.
skin color keeps changing. Sometimes
Well,
we're white, sometimes we're
I think
pink.
it's because of we've got the windows open here, and so the sun is moving, or the earth
But
is
it's like,
rotating.
it's not rotating that fast. Like I'm like white
know, it's only
and
an
then
hour.
pink and almost red and then white and pink. No, it's like changing like in seconds.
It could be a problem with the camera and how it's.
I don't mind. I mean,
handling
it
the
doesn't
light.
make me
I
look
don't know.
bad. So,
I mean, we got a ring light, but I don't know.
yeah. The ring light's not changing. I looked at it and it's staying the
Okay.
same. Some problem.
Who
with that.
knows?
But it was just interesting to me. So,
Okay, well there you go.
but I notice like how my skin looks because I'm on camera all the time teaching.
Yeah.
And so like I keep the lights out because I look younger, my teeth look whiter, so things like that. But
Okay, well.
yeah, I look at myself
Go ahead
in
and
the
give the ads.
camera all the time.
We'll let people
So,
know.
okay, so we are here at 4 o'clock every Saturday, except for the Saturdays that we're not. And so far, we're going to be here every Saturday for a while because we have no other plans. And next week's topic is, I typed it this morning, but now I can't remember what it was.
No, let me look. Keep talking about other things.
Oh, science. You keep using that word, but I don't think it means what you think it means.
Right.
Yes. It's a perverted quote from, the quote's not perverted. We perverted the quote from Princess Bride.
Right.
So anyway, so come and find out what that's about next week. And if you're looking for a place to worship, you can join us here in person or on live stream, depending on where you live and how comfortable you are with being with people in a room right now. And at 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Some of us
Have had one shot.
have had one shot. So yeah.
Us two right here. So
Actually, several people that come.
yes, so a bunch of us have had our first shot, and people are just now getting around to the dates for their second. My mom's now had her second shot, but she's never here. She lives down below.
She lives a long
But
ways away.
anyway, so if you're looking for a place to worship, join us online. We live stream our services 11 a.m. Pacific time every Sunday, and tomorrow is Easter, so you can join us. Although the sermon, we don't change the sermons based on the holiday.
Sometimes I do. This time I didn't.
Yeah, so sometimes it lends itself, but usually he's going through a series, and so he just keeps going, which our church is used to. We've done it that way for years. So we don't do sunrise services. We found out we are not morning people.
None of us.
Yeah, we tried a morning service, or a sunrise service once, and everybody dragged their sorry selves into the
It's like,
desert.
no, we don't want to do
And I was
this
like, yeah,
anymore.
let's not do this again. This is not good. So yeah. So anyway, so you guys have a good week, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Yep.